this, and therefore all the econometric models aren't really going to be perfect because they're plugging in numbers from the past, and we've never had anything quite like this. So maybe their estimates are right, but I think that might be on the upside as opposed to more on the downside, where I think they should be. When you want to get a government permit, let's say to build a facility, an energy facility, or borrow money from the SBA, you can't get that right now. If you're going to get a tax refund to use for some spending, you can't get that right now. So it's really, I think, having a big impact on the economy. And I think both parties know this. They're looking for a way out. I think something will get done soon because I think both parties know they are going to be hurt by it.
What's soon? I mean, this can't last for 6 months, can it?
It cannot, and the U.S. economy couldn't survive it for 6 months, in my view. I think they both need a face-saving way out. I've suggested a couple ideas. One would be having the usual model that we've done in the past, which is to have a presidential commission study this for 2 months, 3 months. Get a Democrat who's a former, let's say, head of Homeland Security, a Republican former head of Homeland Security, have them come together, 75 days, come back to the report of what needs to be done, and for that 75-day period of time, fund the government. Right. I've also suggested it might be possible for the President of the United States to agree to this without having to sign legislation. You can have a bill passed by Congress, the President doesn't have to sign it, it still goes into effect. That's in the Constitution.
Okay, is that hurting the investment landscape in the U.S.?
It's not helping it. Now, there are always some bottom fishers who are benefiting when things are falling apart. But for most people, you're better off if the economy is growing. And it's not really growing right now at the rate that you would want it to grow. So business people are beginning to say to the administration and to Congress, get your act together, get something done here. Now, I don't have an easy solution. It's not something that's going to happen in a minute, but members of Congress and the people in the administration know this has to get done soon, and I don't think it can go on for another week like this.
If I could switch gears to the arrogance of technology, you have fought against this for your entire career at Carlyle, and we're seeing this now with this project collapsing, even some tragic suicides among these young kids. When does tech in Silicon Valley, when do they grow up? When do they start acting like the financiers like you?
Well, I'm not going to agree with everything you said. I think it is the case that technology has its downsides for certain, and it's hard. Who would have believed that years ago so much of our GDP would be dependent on a few companies? 4 or 5 companies who control a large part of our GDP and a large part of the economic growth.
Are they Standard Oil of John D. Rockefeller?
They are not. But the companies like Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, they're all great companies, but they have a disproportionate amount of economic wealth. And while I'm not saying that's bad, I just think people have to deal with it, and we haven't completely adjusted our economy to deal with it.
So is it up to them to try and retrain some of the workers that are losing their jobs because of technology? I
think all the CEOs of those companies recognize that they have some social responsibilities. It's clear that they do, absolutely. I think in the 1980s, it was generally viewed, because of maybe Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, other people, Milton Friedman, that shareholders were the only people you had to worry about if you were running a public company, just the shareholders and the stock price. Now people recognize there are social responsibilities. And a lot of the companies I mentioned are very good on social responsibility, but they can't solve all these problems by themselves.
But does that also go to taxes?
Well, no company says, I want to be taxed more. So, yes, nobody is fighting for higher taxes generally. But I think the tax situation in the United States is complicated now. I think the tax cut bill probably could have been improved in some ways. And I suspect the Democrats, when they control the Ways and Means Committee, as they do now, will probably try to make some modifications to the bill. It probably won't get through the Senate, but something might happen.
Our Bloomberg shot in Washington has your Library of Congress in the background behind the Capitol. The arch issue, David Rubenstein, is the inequality on income, and particularly the inequality on wealth in America.
Yes.
Do you advocate for some form of left or Democrat or social redistribution, or is there another path to a more equal America?
You're not going to solve the inequality problem in the United States by changing the tax code. You have to do other things. It's not easy. But the real problem is not just income inequality, it's social mobility. People on the bottom have given up to some extent in trying to get to the top. I started in the bottom. I thought I could get to the top, believing in the American dream. Many people now on the bottom don't think they can get there. So you have to educate people much more than we are. Right now, we have large numbers of people still dropping out of high school. We have in this country, this is hard to believe, but roughly 14% of our entire population is illiterate, functionally illiterate. They can't read past the 4th grade level. When you're functionally illiterate, you have a better chance of being in the juvenile delinquency system, our federal prison system. 2/3 of our federal prisoners are functionally illiterate. 80% of people in juvenile delinquency are functionally illiterate. That's the biggest problem. You've got to educate people, and that's not an overnight solution.
Yeah. We'll continue this discussion. David Rubenstein with us, the star of Bloomberg Television and peer-to-peer conversations with Mr. Rubenstein, and of course with the Carlyle Group. We've got much more coming up. Top of the hour next scheduled. Kenneth Rogoff of Harvard with Noral Rubini of Rubini Macro Associates. Looking forward to speaking to Rogoff and Rubini, and then we'll move on through the day with other good conversation. From the World Economic Forum in Davos, this is Bloomberg.